So, what happens when the incredible discipline of a soldier or a police officer gets turned against the very state they swore to protect? Today, we're going to break down something called the obedience pipeline, a really fascinating and sometimes troubling journey that can transform some service members into political figures. Let's dive in.
It's a huge question, right? It seems like a total paradox. We train people to be the guardians of our system, and yet a small number of them end up as some of its loudest challengers. But this isn't just a story about a few bad apples. It's really about a system, a pipeline. And understanding how that pipeline works is, well, it's absolutely critical.
And I want to be crystal clear about this right up front. This is not in any way an attack on veterans or police. The overwhelming majority serve with honor and transition back to civilian life without issue. What we're looking at here is a structural pipeline. It's a specific combination of psychology, training, and vulnerability that can, unfortunately, be exploited in a small but really significant minority. Okay, so where does this all begin? Well, it starts way back at recruitment. We have to understand not just who signs up for these hierarchical discipline institutions, but also how the intense training they go through fundamentally reshapes the way they see the world. A really key piece of this puzzle is a personality trait that psychologists call right-wing authoritarianism, or RWA. Now, this is zero to do with which political party you vote for. It's about a personality type that really values order, tradition, and respect for authority. And the research shows that people who score higher on RWA are just naturally more drawn to institutions like the military. It feels like a good fit for them. And right alongside that, you've got another trait, social dominance orientation, or SDO. This is basically a preference for clear, group-based hierarchies. Knowing who's in charge and where everyone fits. And studies show that when recruits are high in both of these traits, RWA and SDO, they report being much more satisfied and committed. The institution's values just click with their own, and that creates this powerful reinforcing loop. So you have this raw material, this psychological profile, and then it gets forged into something new through training. And this is a very deliberate, methodical process. First step, de-individuation. The uniforms, the synchronized drills, it's all designed to erase the I and replace it with the we. Next, you've got cognitive overload. High-stress training literally makes it harder to do complex ethical reasoning. Instead, obedience becomes automatic, an instinct. And this all leads to what's called the agentic state. You start to see yourself less as an individual making choices and more as an instrument of authority. The moral responsibility for your actions, that gets transferred up the chain of command. Now, this kind of conditioning is absolutely essential on the battlefield. No question. But what happens when the uniform comes off for good? That transition period back to civilian life, it's a critical turning point. It can create this huge void where the structure, the mission, and the identity that defined your entire life just disappears overnight. For most people, that transition goes well. They find new jobs, new communities, a new sense of purpose. But for a minority, the path can be really, really tough. We've seen from studies how some veterans can face unemployment, housing instability, and this deep, profound social isolation that just leaves them feeling completely adrift. So what actually creates this vulnerability? Well, it's kind of like a perfect storm. You've got the sudden loss of that mission and purpose, the tight-knit social bonds are suddenly gone, and you often have high rates of mental health challenges like PTSD. And at the exact same time, their tactical skills become a valuable commodity, attractive not just to employers, but to others as well. You see, this combination, a deep personal need for purpose, combined with a very valuable and practical skill set, it creates this profound vulnerability. And that vulnerability, well, it creates an opportunity. But an opportunity for whom exactly? An opportunity for groups that are basically waiting in the wings? Groups that understand exactly what these individuals have lost and know precisely how to offer a version of it right back to them. And this brings us to what you could call the civilian boot camp. This is where political or ideological movements start to mimic the very structures of military life. The hierarchy, the brotherhood, that clear sense of mission, to pull in followers who are just desperate to find that structure and purpose they've lost. And look, this isn't just a theory. We can see this happening in the real world. You have figures using military metaphors to organize rallies, podcasts that cleverly blend inspiring veteran stories with a very specific political agenda, online accounts using special forces imagery to build a following.
They are all in their own way, providing a new uniform and a new mission. Sometimes, the recruitment is shockingly direct. Just take a look at this quote from a figure named Scott Challen, who openly invited supporters of the National Socialist Network to join his group, promising to adapt my message to your feedback. I mean, that's basically a playbook for offering a custom-built mission to people on the ideological fringes.
And this is how extreme ideas can start to travel. Think of it like a ladder of normalization. It starts with grassroots energy, maybe grievances bubbling up online. Then, credible figures, often veterans, step in to organize that energy, framing activism as a patriotic mission. And before you know it, some of that same rhetoric, those same themes, start popping up in mainstream political discussions. A really crucial tactic here is something called borrowed legitimacy. It's pretty simple, actually. If your movement's ideas aren't very popular on their own, you just wrap them in the symbols of institutions people already trust, like military uniforms or flags or patriotic imagery, to give your movement an air of credibility it hasn't actually earned. Okay, so if this is a structural pipeline, then it needs structural solutions, right? How do we counter the flow? The focus here isn't on censorship or punishment, but on something much more powerful: building democratic resilience by tackling those root vulnerabilities we talked about.
The evidence points to a really clear multi-part strategy. It starts with seriously strengthening support for service members before they even leave. It means investing in digital literacy so people can spot disinformation from a mile away. And this is a big one. It means creating positive, alternative civic pathways, like paid roles in disaster relief, that can offer that same sense of mission and camaraderie. And of course, making sure peer-led support networks have the resources they actually need.
And for all of us, there are things we can watch for and ways we can help. The warning signs? They're not really about political disagreements. It's more about a change in thinking. A sudden shift to really rigid us versus them language, or when someone starts describing politics as actual warfare. And the best response isn't to argue or confront, it's to connect, to ask curious questions, gently guide them toward peer support, and try to focus on solving problems together instead of just assigning blame. So all of this leaves us with a really fundamental question, doesn't it? How do we as a society properly honor the incredible discipline and commitment forged in service, while also fiercely protecting the very democracy that service was meant to defend? The real challenge, it seems, is making sure that the mission of serving the country can continue in positive ways long after the uniform has been put away for the last time.